The roar of the engines was deafening. The plane had been cruising smoothly through a sea of clouds when, without warning, a violent shudder shook the cabin. Passengers gasped, clutching their seats as the seatbelt signs lit up. The once calm flight now felt like a battle against an unseen force. A few minutes ago, the scene in the cabin was a blend of tranquility and soft murmurs. Now it was filled with the sound of terror, a chorus of fear echoing through the plane. People screamed, some cried out for help, while others froze in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. Many reached for the small oxygen mask dangling from the seat in front, pulling it over their faces. Yet even those who had donned the masks were unable to ignore the sudden drop in air pressure that made their ears pop. Among the 200 or so souls aboard, one young woman stood out. Her name was Sarah, and a deep sense of foreboding had gripped her since boarding the aircraft. While others dozed or watched movies, she stared listlessly out of the window. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of apprehension. She tried to shake off this feeling, attributing it to turbulence, but it only intensified. Sarah's anxiety was palpable. She could feel her hands trembling uncontrollably. Despite the ongoing turbulence, she grabbed the armrests, her fingers digging into the worn leather. The room seemed to spin around her, the sounds of the cabin blending into a dissonant hum. The normal chatter of the flight had ceased. Fear hung heavy in the air. All eyes were fixed on the flight attendants, their faces pale, moving about the cabin in an attempt to restore order. But no amount of reassuring smiles could dispel the growing terror. When the jet suddenly dropped, Sarah instinctively gripped the seat in front of her, her gaze darting around. She could see the panic etched on the faces of those around her. A man in the row behind her had slumped in his seat, muttering something under his breath. Another passenger was frantically making the sign of the cross. These images, coupled with the chilling realization that the plane was spiraling downward, sent a fresh wave of panic through her. As Sarah struggled to control her racing heartbeat, the cabin crew member approached, their forced smile doing little to hide their own fear. Their voices, though strained, rang with authority. They moved methodically through the cabin, securing loose items and checking on passengers, but their efficiency couldn't mask the urgency in their movements. The low rumble of the engines was a constant reminder of their vulnerability, of their helplessness against the invisible force that was toying with their lives. The cabin went from being a sanctuary in the skies to a tomb, a coffin of metal and glass hurtling towards the earth. Sarah found herself enveloped in darkness when the lights flickered and died, plunging the cabin into an abyss of shadows, the only illumination coming from the emergency exit signs, casting an eerie glow on the faces around her. The smell of fear hung heavy in the air. In that dark, suffocating space, Sarah could hear the sound of terror-stricken whispers, the rustle of frightened prayers. Then there was the sound of metal on metal, the screech of the plane's bones grinding against each other. It was a horrifying soundtrack to the descent into chaos. Then came the deafening crack. The sound reverberated through the cabin, bouncing off the terrified faces of the passengers. Many gasped, their eyes wide with terror. Sarah, frozen in her seat, could only stare blankly ahead as the world around her descended into pandemonium. The ominous crack was followed by a sickening lurch. The plane had hit something, and as it careened off course, a wild sob tore through the cabin. This wasn't turbulence, this was terror. The aircraft plummeted, tumbling through the sky like a fallen leaf in a storm. People screamed, thrashing about in their seats as the plane fought its way back into the heavens. Every lurch, every twist threatened to send it spiraling further into the abyss. The cabin was a maelstrom of noise and movement, of terror and despair. In the midst of the chaos, Sarah remembered her family, her parents, her little brother. She thought of all the dreams and plans she had, all the moments she hoped to experience. And a surge of emotion, raw and untamed, coursed through her. This couldn't be the end. Not like this. Not before she had lived, before she had loved, before she had fulfilled all the promises she had made to herself. And that's when the courage found her. Sarah sat bolt upright, her eyes wide with determination. She had to do something, anything, to change the course of their fate. As the screams around her reached a crescendo, she found her voice. It was a whisper at first, a tiny flame in the wind, but she spoke anyway. "Lord, if you can hear me," she started, her voice trembling. "Please, I'm sorry for every moment I doubted you. I place my life in your hands now. Please save us. Please save everyone here." Her words hung in the air, a silent plea amidst the cacophony of terror. But Sarah didn't stop. She continued to pray, pouring out her heart, begging for a miracle, for a chance at life, for the strength to keep going. Her prayer was a lifeline thrown into the tempestuous sea of chaos, a beacon in the darkness, a cry for help that echoed through the turbulent journey. And slowly, miraculously, things began to change. The tumultuous ride started to ease a little. The relentless rocking of the plane began to slow down. The incessant screams in the cabin gradually faded into whimpers. And as the seconds ticked by, something extraordinary happened. People began to calm down. Sarah's prayer had sparked a shift, not just in the atmosphere of the plane, but in the hearts of the passengers. The man in the row behind her who had slumped in his seat earlier was now kneeling, his head bowed in prayer. The woman in front of him was clutching a rosary, her lips moving in silent supplication. Even the cabin crew seemed to find solace in Sarah's prayer, their faces etched with gratitude as they joined the chorus of pleas and thanks. As the first rays of sunlight peeked through the clouds, Sarah opened her eyes. The cabin was filled with a profound hush, a shared silence that spoke volumes of the terror they had faced and the hope that had sustained them. Looking around, she saw that the faces that had been pale with fear were now illuminated with gratitude. The lady across the aisle from her had tears streaming down her face. The man in the row behind her was clasping her hand, offering silent comfort. Together, they had weathered the storm, bound together by a shared experience of fear and faith. The announcement came over the intercom, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had preceded it. The calm voice of the pilot broke through the quiet, announcing their imminent landing, assuring them that they were in the hands of emergency services. Relief washed over Sarah, bringing with it a wave of exhaustion. As the plane touched down on the runway, a smattering of applause broke out in the cabin. It was hesitant at first, then grew in volume, echoing the sentiments of every passenger. They had survived when the emergency exit door opened and the blinding light of the runway flooded in. Sarah was one of the last to leave the plane, but as she stepped onto the tarmac, she didn't look back. She had seen enough of the inside of that plane for a lifetime. She didn't need to see the fear etched into the cabin walls or the scars left on the seats by the ordeal. She wanted to move forward. As she walked away from the wreckage of Flight 427, Sarah felt a profound sense of change within her. She realized that the ordeal had stripped away all pretense, leaving her with a raw, unfiltered understanding of life and its fragility. She realized that the promises she had made to herself, the dreams she had harbored, they all seemed trivial in the face of the reality she had just escaped. In that moment, she vowed to live differently, to honor the second chance at life that she had been given. She would love more fiercely, laugh more readily, and never take another moment for granted. For Sarah, survival wasn't just about living to tell the tale. It was about transforming the tale itself. It was about taking the fragments of her old life and weaving them into a new tapestry, one that was richer, more vibrant, and deeply grateful for every thread that held it together.